I am reading the second book of the series of books called The Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East. The morning of January the 1st found us up early with faculties alert. Everyone seemed to feel that there was something ahead that would make our past experiences but stepping stones for those to come. As we gathered around the breakfast table, the friends joined us whom we had met on the roof of Emal's home in the little village where we had stopped while on our way here. You will recall him as the one who interpreted my dream. After exchanging greetings, he said, "You have been with us for more than a year. You have traveled with us and lived among us and shared our lives, and you no doubt have confidence in us. As you will be with us until April or May, I have come to invite you to go to the Temple of the Great Tall Cross, which you have observed is cut in the rock of the cliff just outside the village." We found afterwards that the rooms of this temple were cut from the rock that formed a perpendicular cliff over 600 feet high. The opening that formed the rooms were cut deep enough into the walls so that all walls were of rock. Wherever it was necessary to place windows to admit light and air, openings had been cut through the outer wall of the cliff which faced south. The openings for the windows were about 8 feet square, and each room had 2 openings except the first or lower room. This room had only 1 opening, which communicated with a large crevice that was worn in the rock wall just east of the temple. When the rooms of the temple were cut from the rock, this room had no opening other than the entrance, which was from a tunnel cut from the solid rock and terminating in the crevice mentioned. The opening for the window was put in later. Originally, the entrance to the tunnel was hidden under a great boulder, which was one of a mass that had fallen from the sides of the cliff and lodged on a projecting shelf, and this boulder had been so arranged that it could be dropped into place from the passageway. When in place, it could not be moved from the outside. The only way of reaching this shelf was by a ladder about 50 feet long that could be raised or lowered from above. The openings that served as windows were fitted with great flat stones that fitted into grooves at the bottom so that they could be slid into place. When they were in place, there was to one standing in the village no appearance of an opening. We were told that the construction was resorted to for protection from the marauding bands that infested the country further north. These bands at times came as far south as this village. The village had been destroyed a number of times, but the people had not been harmed, as they could take refuge in the temple. The temple had not been built by our friends, but had been acquired by them from the villagers, to be used as a place to keep numerous records, which they prized very highly. After their acquisition of the temple, the raids ceased. The village had not been molested, and they all lived in peace. The rooms of this temple were arranged one above the other for 7 stories, and communications between the rooms was by means of a series of stone steps cut in the solid rock. The opening to gain access to the stairway was at one corner of the room and communicated directly with the stairway, which rose at an angle of 45 degrees until it reached a landing about 8 feet square, where the entrance to the room above was cut. There was about 8 feet of solid rock left between the ceiling of the room below and the floor of the room above. The ceiling of the upper room of the 7th story terminated about 12 feet below a wide, jutting ledge of rocks about 100 feet from the top of the precipice. A stairway led from this room up through an opening that communicated with the center room, so that a diagram of the whole structure would represent a huge tall cross. The rooms above were cut so that the ledge formed a porch or balcony, and the entrances were from the ledge. The cliff was soft, coarse-grained granite. The work evidently had been done with crude hand implements, and it must have taken years to accomplish. It is claimed that not a piece of timber was used when the temple was constructed. After it was acquired by our friends, they put in timber, and the rooms were all very comfortable, especially on sunshiny days. We learned that since they had acquired the temple, the windows had never been closed nor the entrance barred, yet very few had ever visited there unless they had seen and knew something of the true spiritual enlightenment. Our friend continued, "This day is to you the beginning of a new year. the old having passed out, as it were, from your life, never to return, except possibly in thought, as the memory of its pleasures, its sorrows and cares, and the more engrossing thoughts of business come flooding back. Aside from that, it is forgotten, gone, to you a page torn away from the book year of your life. We look upon it as a period of carrying us on to a more glorious development and achievement, a time of greater promise and enlightenment, a time when we can be of greater service, when we can be younger, stronger, and more loving from each succeeding experience. Your thought is, why? Our answer is, to draw your own conclusions, choose your own life. Our chief said, without any thought of intruding, we wish to see and to know. Our friend resumed, from this time on, there are definite lessons for those who do not see and know or grasp the full meaning of the goal of life well lived. This does not mean a life of asceticism and austerity and aloofness or sadness. This means a life of accomplishment in joy and gladness, where all sorrows, all pains are banished forever. Then, in a lighter and more whimsical mood, he said, you have expressed a desire to see and know. The desire is no sooner expressed than it is fulfilled. The thought expressed in a verse in your Bible comes to me as I look over this assembly. Where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there will I be also. How often that verse has been looked upon as a mere play upon words, instead of being applied and made really true. The great error you have made with Jesus' teachings is you have consigned them to the dim and misty past, looking upon them as mythical and mystical, pointing to something that may be gained after death, instead of knowing that they can be applied in the daily lives of all, right here and now, if you only will. We wish it to be understood that we are not putting forth the claim that Jesus, as the Christ, represented a plane or condition of life in his own realization that had not been brought forth to a greater or lesser degree by a great many seers and prophets of other times and peoples. We wish to emphasize his life because that life is the one you can understand more fully. The specific reference to his own life can have but one purpose and meaning, and that was the faith-inspiring fact that his life and experience was the living demonstration of his teachings. The speculative dogma of vicarious atonement, which has biased Christian thought for centuries, cannot be charged to the author of the Sermon on the Mount or the parable of the prodigal son. The leaders of Christian thought have diverted the followers of Jesus and his teachings from their practical application and the study of the God power. They have taught them to look upon his teachings as the experiences of the apostles after his time, instead of teaching them that the law upon which these teachings were based was an exact science which could be understood and experienced in the lives of all. The Orientals have made the scientific phase of their religion the supreme object of their study and attainment. In this they have gone to the other extreme. In this way both have consigned their religion to the realm of the miraculous and supernatural. The one has become absorbed in the wholly ethical, while the other has become absorbed in the scientific side only. Thus both have shut out the spirituality. The monastic life of retirement, asceticism, and seclusion from the world, whether in Buddhistic or Christian monasteries, is neither a necessity, nor is it the true method of attaining spiritual enlightenment, nor the realization of the perfect life of wisdom and power as brought forth by Jesus. These monastic systems have been in existence for many thousands of years, yet they have in no wise accomplished as much for the uplift of the common people as did the teachings of Jesus in the very few short years of his time here on earth. It is very well known that he embraced all of their teachings, going through the initiations and studying the so-called sacred mysteries, the ritualistic forms and ceremonies, until he came to the teachings of Osiris. These were interpreted to him by a priest who had held himself aloof from all the ritualistic, monastic, and materialistic forms of worship.